Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Katie Monahan, and I'm a communications strategist here at the Ohio Arts Council, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, Ensuring the Arts Are Non-Negotiables in Education. This special presentation spotlights a panel discussion that took place at Ashland High School in Ashland earlier this year. The panel was moderated by Ohio Arts Council Executive Director Donna and featured Superintendent of Ashland City Schools, Dr. Doug Marrah, Ashland teachers Marty, Kral, and Dedrick, and Ohio Alliance for Arts Education Executive Director Jarrod Hartzler. Before we dive in, I'd like to offer just a little bit of background on this topic. So in spring of 2021, OAC Executive Director Donna was invited by Ashland educators to celebrate the school's Fine Arts Signing Day. This is a wonderful event where arts leaders and faculty, family members, and community members gather to recognize students who are making a commitment to continue their study of the arts post-graduation. Following the celebration, Donna asked Dr. Marrah, how does a district garner support for the arts from its Board of Education? And his answer was simple. I always start with the non-negotiables, he said, and the arts for students are non-negotiable. So this panel expands upon Dr. Marrah's words, and it delves into the integral role that the arts play as part of a high-quality, well-rounded education for today's youth. There's a lot to learn from these arts educators, and we hope that you find this discussion inspiring.
Hello, and welcome to our session, Ensuring the Arts Are Non-Negotiable in Education. I'm Donna, Executive Director of the Ohio Arts Council, your state agency that funds arts and arts education in all 88 counties of our state. I'm joined here by four fabulous colleagues. Dr. Doug Marrah, Superintendent of Ashland City Schools, Jarrod Hartzler, the Executive Director of the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education, Marty Kral, Director of Bands and Music Department Chair for Ashland High School, Dedrick, who teaches a full complement of visual arts classes. He's also the technology coach and assistant marching band director here at the Ashland High School. That's a lot, Cameron. Gentlemen, to set the stage for today's session, I'd love for each of you to take 60, 90 seconds and tell us why you value arts education as part of a high-quality education for today's children. How about Dr. Marrah? Do you want to go first?
I would be glad to go first. Well, first of all, thank you for visiting us here at our central office for Ashland City Schools. It's a place that we like to showcase art, as you see here, and in the hallways. One of the things when we moved to this building, having that opportunity, I really enjoyed that chance to share what our kids have done via various projects. But I would start out by saying I've always loved the arts. Growing up as a musician with two brothers that were athletes, and I realized early on that I wasn't going to be an athlete, but I really fit into something that was different. That was a musician. My dad, who was an athlete, loved it. My dad supported me, so I was early on very well loved and supported by my mother and father, and any performance that I performed and my dad showed up at, and my mom was often with him. And having that support was really important to me. And when I look at the opportunities for kids today, our kids have to have opportunities because we think of three things in Ashland City Schools: the arts, academics, and athletics. That's how we make a well-rounded student. And we have so many kids that participate in all three. Obviously, academics are non-negotiable as well. But the arts, it's so important because as soon as we let up one little bit, people will look for an opportunity to move in a different direction. But what we've done, really with the help of these two gentlemen and the rest of our fabulous staff, is add opportunities for kids, and that's what we want to do. Have someone find the spot they fit in, not only the arts, but a specific spot of the arts. So we're beyond blessed with the facilities we have here and the adults that teach our kids.
Thank you so much. Marty, would you like to go next?
Sure. It's easy to talk about the arts as a music teacher, but it's amazing how kids have that moment to be creative, to open up, and to give a part of themselves as being part of the arts. And one thing we do here at Ashland for sure is create ways to find that little spark in a student. Certainly, the core curriculum allows for children to excel, but under certain guidelines to make sure that we've got all those different standards met. In the arts, we have more of a creative outlet and different ways we can go about doing that. And I think that's one of the best things that we can do here as teachers to give those kids that outlet. And that's something the arts just allows for in so many different ways.
more than an outlet, though, for you two, it becomes part of their social family.
Yes.
Where they interact, where they spend time outside of school, where they choose to be around each other because they build a separate family, which is really just incredible.
It's amazing how people grow. It's really exponential with the arts, especially here in Ashland.
Cameron?
I think the arts give kids a voice. It doesn't matter if it's visual arts or performing arts. They have a chance to create something that until they came along didn't exist before. To kind of think to yourself that, I created this thing, and to have that pride in making it, and all of a sudden you've got this piece of music that you played, and other people may have written it, but but you put your own twist on it. No one has ever played it like you've played it before. As when my kids create a piece of artwork, that it's before they came along, that piece never existed. It came from their brain. I think that's such a great thing, and I want to go off what Dr. Marrah was saying also about creating that sense of family in those environments. Is that our kids, they find their niche, they find that group, and they say, before they may have been with the same class for so long, and going through an elementary, when they get to their own specific art classes, they find out, hey, we do that sort of the same thing. They start feeding off each other. They start working as a studio environment, or my printmakers work as a print group, and start actually functioning together. And it's just a really neat thing to see kids grow as individuals, but also kind of come together as a family.
Thank you. Jarrod?
Well, thank you, Donna. To follow what everyone has just said, at the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education, our mission, of course, is to ensure that the arts are an integral part of the education of every Ohioan, and that's because of everything we've heard here so far, right? We know that students who participate in the arts achieve more academically, become more well-rounded thinkers, generally have more creative and successful and productive lives, and all of us know that the impact that arts have had on children through those formative years will support and nourish them through their entire adulthood.
Thank you. And before we get started with the real nuggets of our session today, when I walked into this boardroom, I noticed all the kid art that's in here, from little kids to almost adult kids, right? So Dr. Marrah, tell us a little about that. And I think there's also a calendar project that you do. Would you mind?
I would be glad to, and I think if I miss anything, Mr. Dedrick can jump in and help. Certainly. The artwork that's behind us tonight is it's a program called the Art Showcase. And the Art Showcase works with our local businesses through our Tri-County area, and they offer work to any business, and they show the artwork. I know Mr. Dedrick helps with the PowerPoint now that we have used to show them the examples. They go through it, they pick a piece of artwork, they sponsor it, so they write a check to sponsor it. It's then framed beautifully by a man, Gary McFarland, so talented. He brings out the colors, and it's wonderful to see the children talk about their art and how it looks so different to them framed. Love that experience, and I can listen to that all night. The one right in front of you, Donna, is a special piece that has the butterfly on the lion's nose. And I was talking to the young man who created that, and he talked so much about the framing that I had a hard time getting him back to what he was thinking when he made the artwork. Loved that conversation. And once they're then framed and we have our night that we showcase their work, they go out to the business for a year that sponsors them. Then they come back to our office in the hallway. We display them in the halls here for a year. Then they go to their school. And sometimes, if we really like them, they come back here for another year. And then we have a lot of kids that they're getting out of college and getting their artwork back framed. So it's a great opportunity to do this, and appreciate the cooperation of our Educational Service Center that does a lot of that work for us.
That's really wonderful.
And I would add the calendar.
Yeah,
Sure.
Will you tell me about the calendar?
Calendar is a neat piece that's been going on. This is the 26th year, Mr. Dedrick, I believe.
Yes, I believe you're right.
And every year, the art teachers go through, highlight, and showcase the artwork of different students. On that page, that work, I'm going to have Mr. Dedrick talk about it, because that was the young man that did Robin Hood with the arrow was here, and I talked to him about it afterwards, because that was my favorite piece. It reminds me of the old Action Jackson or the Johnny West dolls when I was a kid, how that turns out material-wise. Just different art. The digital art that they do. The front page is a digital art piece, the cover, and our kids come in and are so excited to share their artwork with the group that is in attendance and have a conversation with their parents, the room, and their art teachers, sometimes revisiting a teacher that they're not in that building anymore. Great selection, and I know Mr. Dedrick leads the way with picking the right artwork and balancing out. Little kids all the way, our preschoolers all the way through our seniors and graduated seniors are honored each year. So we love to do that time, and I'll just add, because one of the things to probably foreshadow, when we do this work, I want our principals to think of this, the work the kids are showcasing. I told them this year, and I remember coming in here and Mr. Dedrick and one of the other art teachers said, wow, all the principals are here. The art calendar was one night that we did the presentation of the families and the students of their artwork, and then we also do the showcase, which is another night closer to Christmas. And I told our principals, because I was disappointed in the turnout of our administrators, that they should treat this event as if it was a varsity sport in their building and they needed to be here. And as a result of that, Mr. Dedrick and a couple of art teachers said, I can't believe how many administrators were here. Now, I didn't do that for me. I did it because I wanted them to be here to see the work of their kids and acknowledge work their teachers had done. And it just came into my head one day to do that. And both events were so well attended. I believe one of our new principals, he came to the showcase with two of his kids, and he didn't leave. He had so much fun, he didn't leave. So it was a great night, and that's sharing your passion and sometimes making things non-negotiable what people might have thought they were.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. I know that it's sort of like walking the walk, right? So you walk in and there's art here. You know that things have happened. Quite frankly, in the hallway, I could hear music when I was out in the hallway. So I thought, this is a great place to be. So today, I've jotted down a few questions, and I appreciate that you are letting me ask you these questions off the cuff. None of you have paper in front of you, which that's impressive. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So Jarrod, you're first. Let's start with you so that you can give us a quick overview of your organization, the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education.
Sure. Thanks, Donna. The Ohio Alliance for Arts Education, as I mentioned before, of course, has the primary mission of making sure that our high-quality arts education is part of the education of every Ohioan. We do that through many things. We, of course, spend a lot of time doing advocacy work with the Department of Education, with funding, really any component that affects arts education, talking about teacher licensure, making sure that teachers who are licensed to teach the arts actually are teaching them, all of those good things, as well as a plethora of professional development opportunities for teachers. So we lead the cause on everything from arts education assessment. So how do our arts educators assess their student learning so that they're able to chart that. We work in partnership, of course, with the Ohio Arts Council and the Ohio Department of Education on a lot of things, including the important project of the Arts Education Data Dashboard, which now is a 5-year longitudinal data program that anyone can go to on any of those 3 organizations' websites, where you can look at districts, schools, counties, to see what arts programs are offered, what classes are taught, how many teachers are in a district, what the percentage of students enrolled in the arts are, all of those sorts of things. So really just, again, the primary goal is just doing everything we can to advocate for arts education in Ohio schools.
Thank you, Jarrod. Dr. Marrah, I know you have a long and enduring journey with the arts, and I think folks in our audience would like to know how you were impacted by the arts as a student and today as a superintendent. So will you take a few minutes to talk with us about that journey and the decisions you made and the decisions you make today as a superintendent, and how that impacts what the kids here in Ashland and actually what kids across the state receive for arts education?
Well, thank you. I would probably start out by saying that as a young person, I had to make decisions, and now I get to make decisions. It's probably the biggest difference. And so I had to make a decision growing up that I want to be a professional musician at Ohio State. That's what I thought I wanted to do. I played electric bass and upright bass at Ohio State, and I know Mr. Kral won't let it. he would want me to mention that I did play tuba and bass drum in the hockey band at Ohio State. But very, very hard to get in that group.
Prestigious.
Yes, yes. But as I learned and grew, I really thought I wanted to be a performing artist. But I stopped along the way and had the opportunity to do some music lessons and some music teaching. That made me realize, wait a second, I really like kids. I really like doing this work. And I was able to take what I love doing in groups, in trios, quartets, anything, large groups, and then make that something that was part of, could be a job. Didn't even think about that. And I think that one of the things that our gentleman here will talk about, all those other opportunities in terms of employment, but loved that experience at Ohio State, and then realizing I wanted to be a music teacher really changed my life. And I'd always thought that I would have to be a salesman or an athlete like my brothers, or like my mother, working in the office. But being a teacher, what a cool thing. What a cool thing to impact kids. And I remember my first job when I taught in Central Florida, and the kids would come out to my portable classroom, and they would come out to the classroom, they'd wander out, and they would have so much fun, and I would have them so fired up that they would go running back to the building. The teachers didn't appreciate that very much, so we're trying to come back and teach them reading as first graders. But I did meet my lovely, awesome wife there, and she was one of the people that gave me that heads up. You know, they may not appreciate that as much as you think they do when you send them back. And I told her one time, I said, well, you know, if Mrs. Cooch sends them out fired up to me, I'll get them even more fired back and send them right back to her. But it was a lot of fun with the kids, and I was able to do general music and do strings. And so I journeyed through the strings group, and then I wound up out at the middle school that was next door on that campus in Brevard County, huge district in Florida. And I was taught all day long, so I taught strings and I taught guitar class. And I loved that experience too, because I love the middle age group. Because at middle age, the kids grow and mature and change so much in that period of time. Then we decided to move to Ohio in 1994. I came to Ashland and really thought I died and gone to heaven when I was able to have an orchestral group to play in the awesome acoustic McDowell Auditorium. Love that space. And grew as a teacher, and I'd already completed my master's degree in leadership, and started to think, well, maybe I want to do this principal thing. I want to see how this works. And part of that was because I remember thinking how I might do the schedule different if I was the principal, what I might do different. And again, I've had the chance to do that. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've done a few things right. And enjoyed being a principal for 2 years over at Stark County. Came back to Ashland for 3 years. And I remember when I came back, I was really bothered because we didn't have the traveling string teacher coming to the elementary where I was principal of, that I had one of my favorite buildings to work at because I would go out and teach small groups in the schools because I knew that's what we had to do. And consequently, I would say, I'm just going to jump fast forward. When we reorganized our buildings, one of the things that I wanted to do here in Ashland is I wanted to make orchestra and band part of the school day. And we have reaped benefits of that with the quality of kids we have and the quantity of kids in our program. Now, they've done the work when the kids get there, but that was one of the things I immediately changed. I revisited, started as a principal, where's our string teacher? String teacher doesn't come here anymore. Oh yeah. And I had to find a couple instruments for kids. We got that worked out, and we changed that. So 1 or 2 kids, and that's all it takes, making a difference in the world. And I love that part, and I love the interaction. I play guitar, not very well, but for any assembly that we have or any opportunity, I like to play, and at least try to get kids to enjoy music. And then I started to think, what could I do differently if I was a superintendent? I got really lucky to become superintendent out in Stark County, and had the wonderful blessing of building an auditorium. And in that case, and it was because it was part of the state program, it was an auditoria. I refused for it to be a cafetorium because I wanted it to be more auditorium than cafeteria. And that really is a difference. And we battled with the state of Ohio to build a wonderfully, nearly acoustic perfect auditorium that was also a cafeteria. We built leveling into it, and at the back of the room, we actually built the choir room at the back, so we actually had a bit of a balcony that was all part of the facility. And when the architects sent it to the acoustic engineers, they said, this may be the most perfect auditorium we've ever had. but that was also part to our current jazz band director. He's retired and rehired a couple times, and does a tremendous job with our kids. He came over to visit us to make sure that we did one thing essentially right that many people don't. That building had no straight walls. Everything was curved. And because of the curves, that helped. And then other treatments, you start with that. Great opportunity to do that. And then I left Minerva City, local schools to come to Ashland City, back where I'd been a teacher and a principal. And then we were able to build a $5 million auditorium that really, I know you two have been, everyone's been in there. It speaks for itself. And one of my favorite things about that auditorium, as we transitioned, I did love McDowell because I'd played for it in 10 years in the symphony. And I taught in the basement below it. And I had the tennis racket to bat the bats down with when they'd come towards our classroom. But they were always good luck if you had a bat. And the first concert that Mr. Kral played, then I said, you're going to love this auditorium. But I've got good news for you and bad news for you. You guys can edit this out later if it doesn't fit. In this room, the good news is you can hear every note every kid's playing in the group. The bad news is you can hear every note every kid's playing in the group. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I'm probably going on too long, but I love doing what I do, and I get to make those decisions. I don't have to. But I'm never going to put myself in a position where I have to change what we do with the arts. We're going to always look for ways to add that and make sure we balance out what we do for kids, because there are kids that need the arts more than anything else in the world.
Thank you. I love that. So you said arts, academics, athletics, and adding. So that's pretty good. Straight A record, right?
Mm-hmm.
4 A's.
Yes.
I like that your report card's getting better and better all the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure. Cameron, I'm not quite sure how you do your job. So you have visual art, you have music, you have technology. How does all of that collide and work for you and work for the kids and the teachers you partner with?
It's a busy day, but it keeps me moving, and I appreciate that. It's an outstanding opportunity. I'm a studio art teacher by trade. That's what my degree is in, and I teach a handful of classes. I teach drawing, I teach printmaking, I teach sculpture, and we teach the fundamental classes too. But one of the other opportunities I had a while ago, and this was back when I was teaching at the elementary level, was I got to become an assistant band director. And if you're wondering how that happens, it's by the hand of my friend next to me here, Marty, who came to me, and we had worked at the elementary together as elementary music and elementary art. And so when we redistricted, we moved apart, and he came to me about a year later and said, I need an assistant band director. And I said, I'm an art teacher, right? He goes, yeah, but you were in band in high school and in college. You're in Kappa Kappa Psi, you know what's up. And, you can, and mostly I need you to make copies and make sure kids stay in line. Well, I said, I can do that. But so I started doing that back in 2013, and I've been doing it ever since. I love it. And, I get to work with the kids on marching style and form. Now I'm assistant concert band director. I can conduct now, and so that's pretty fantastic. I get to lead groups and get them warmed up and ready, and it's just a fantastic opportunity. And it's a little change of scenery in the middle of my day, where I work in the studio all morning, and then I get to go to band in the middle of the afternoon. And that's pretty much the way it was back when I was in high school. I was in if I wasn't in the art studio, I was in the band room. So that worked out pretty well. And my concentration in visual arts, one of my concentrations, I bit off way more than I should have chewed back in college, and I double concentrated in printmaking and graphic design. But in graphic design, that kind of led me into my technology role. So for a few years, when I got to the high school level, well, that's not entirely true. When I on elementary, I used to do graphic design classes with my kids. When I worked for another school district, they had just redone all their computers, and they'd put the other ones out in the shed to be thrown out. And I talked to my principal. I said, "Do we really have to throw those out?" And she goes, "No." And I said, "Great." And I went out and I got a cart, and I brought 6 of them back in. So I had 10 computers in my room, and we were just running MS Paint and KidPix, but they were learning graphic design. We were importing images of ourselves and drawing over them. So we had that there. And when I got to the high school level here, I taught on laptops and did that, and then we got our fantastic new graphics lab, And that really led us into all the more that we could do. My principal came to me a while ago and said, you know, our video production teacher is retiring. We need somebody to fill that role. And so I said, I can do that. And so over the summer, I quick taught myself, I knew, Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign, so I quick taught myself Premiere and After Effects. And so I took over the video portion of post-production, and Marty took over the production part of that. So we work together in that sense too. So between music and media arts, we do a lot together.
Wow.
But that's pretty much the way my day goes. But it's so great to be able to have that love for the arts and then be able to do it every day. I don't even tell when I go to work in the morning. I don't tell my wife, "Hey, honey, I'm going to work." I say, "Hey, I'm going to school. I'll see you when I get home." Because it's just so awesome to be in that environment and to do what you love. And then to share that with the kids. I think they kind of pick up on that enthusiasm, and that's why we're able to do the wonderful things that we do. And in our graphics lab, we were fortunate enough, you might say, well, how is that possible, with limited funds in a district or whatnot? If you can if you can show that your lab can be useful to more than one entity, it really helps kind of to spread things out a little bit. So our lab is split up into media arts and aero esports. So during the day, the media arts department uses the lab. My media arts interns use it. My media arts 2 kids who are learning the Adobe suite use it. And then as soon as the afternoon hits, bell rings, class is over, the esports kids come in and they transition. It's so neat to see them play in there too. The things, we have top of the line machines as far as graphics processing goes, and it's so neat to see them push the limits of those machines. As powerful as they are, they're pushing them. And so to be able to, that's kind of how we were able to kind of make that work.
And the best part about the way these gentlemen work is they presented their case to me. Here's why we need these machines. Well, in our STEM lab, the computers that run the STEM lab were so busy running that work that took overnight that they couldn't shut down, allegedly, but I believe them. They couldn't stop that processing, so they needed a different set of computers, which I was glad to do because it gives kids other opportunities. When you look at the way he pushes the envelope purely with all the arts, but the computers as a sport, and gives another group of kids a place to fit in. Easy sell.
That is a perfect segue, Superintendent, to my question for Marty. Thank you. That was a great setup.
You're welcome.
Marty, we'd love for you to talk to us about this relationship building, not just the relationship you have with your partner in music and visual art and esports and production and technology, but in general, the camaraderie that exists and how that impacts you as a teacher, as a human being, and as a part of a larger team for the high school.
Sure. Well, it's important to note that there are a ton of music, art, dance, theater people that like to live in their own little bubble. We are different. We're different than a math teacher or an English teacher. Sure, absolutely. But aren't we all just teaching kids? Don't we all have the same goal? We just have different ways to reach that. And so what I found, you start teaching, you start figuring out yourself and how you're teaching and what things work best for you. But one thing I figured out pretty early on is we're all really reaching for that same goal. So with that in mind, when we go to department meetings, faculty meetings, like department head meetings, my goal is always to see how I can connect with whatever the new project is, whether it be a literacy initiative or we've got some data we need to come up with for our students so that we can apply for a grant or so we can report out to the state, that kind of thing. I always go with the mindset that, yeah, I can definitely do that as a music teacher, as an arts teacher. Now, the way I do it might be different than the way the English department does it or the way the math department does it, but I don't see a reason why I would just say, no, that doesn't work for music or that doesn't work for art. And when the staff starts to see that, when they see that I'm part of of the staff, the unit, the group that's working together for that same goal, and not just this outlier that's driving my own path up the hill. When they see that, they recognize that we are together. Then they're going to ask me questions. When we were at the elementary level, Cameron and I, we would specifically ask teachers, hey, send us your curriculum map, because we have a ton of ways to teach design and line and shape and song and meter and tempo, and why not do it in a way that lines up with what you're teaching your third graders that week? There are ways of doing what we do that help others, and there are ways of doing what we do that ignore others or hinder others. And if you choose that path that helps others, just that little bit of camaraderie along in your department, along in your building, in your district, it goes miles and miles and miles. Those relationships, I cherish those, because those are what help you get through the day. They're the people that understand why a kid maybe needs help in a certain way, and you've made that connection that way. Or, yeah, I can help your kids learn that through my class. So we try that at Ashland High School and actually in the other buildings as well. But our goal is always to be a unit. There's no I can't. There's, yeah, we can do that, but here's how I think that works for me or works for our team. And I think that sort of idea and that focus on working together as opposed to working all in separate little units has really pushed us forward and made us part of something special here.
If I can piggyback off that, when I worked at elementary, especially when I even interviewed, they said, now, you know, this position's on a cart. They said, how do you feel about that? And I said, it's actually kind of cool. And they said, really? And I had there were 9 people on my interview panel, and they all just kind of were taken aback for a minute. And I said, no, it's great. I said, first of all, the kids don't have to transition. They're already ready. I said, second of all, I get to see what's going on in their classroom. If I see something on the wall, I can ask the teacher about that. I can ask the kids about that. I say, tell me about what you're working on there. And then I can find a way to tie that into my lessons too. I remember tying in, we do like snowflakes or something like that, and we tie in about the science, and then we talk about Snowflake Bentley, and put photography in there, So it's just so neat to be able to do that, and it really does make you feel like part of that collective educational force.
So, Dr. Marrah, when you hear these two gentlemen talking about partnerships and collegiality and the way that they work with the other subject area experts in your buildings, what's your philosophy that promotes that within the buildings? Because folks in the session today, I think many of them are here to figure out how it's working here, how they might use it in their school building or their district. And so everything you're saying is adding up to an advocacy line, I think, for those in the audience. So if you could share a little of that with us.
Sure. Well, thank you. I would start with, first of all, it just dawned on me, listening to these two gentlemen, I've known them for a long time, we all have elementary backgrounds. And so for everyone, when you realize that you're working with the youngest kids and you work with all kids, if you're at elementary, that's part of where you build your base and you build kids' love of what it is that's important, whether it's literacy, whether it's mathematics, or the arts. So I think that just came in, and I'm glad I just listened and heard that, and that made sense. But most importantly, it's about relationships. It's about knowing what's important and not being afraid to take a risk or ask a question. And I think that for most people, as Mr. Kral said so clearly, you can't live in a bubble. You've got to walk around, you've got to talk to people, and you've got to do something that is valuable to the building, valuable to the kids, valuable to the adults. And a lot of times that can be something that's very small, such as they have different groups that will play for events. They don't even rehearse. We have aero time that they use to rehearse, but it's not our concert band or a jazz band or a choir. They will just show up and add to something. So by making yourself valuable, but also by being team members and finding ways to make all that come together for all kids, that's so important. Building the value, building the team, and then asking questions. Never be afraid to ask a question, because if you don't ask a question, the answer will be no. And you have to realize that the people that you're dealing with, the principal, the assistant superintendents, the superintendents, as they're walking through that building, they may be there because they're solving a problem. But if you just have a conversation, just touch base, read that conversation, that interaction, and say, I just want to come see you, I've got some ideas. What a great way to do that, because a lot of times, if I'm in a building, if I'm hanging out with these guys in our office, that's just us enjoying life and talking about the cool things we get to do together. But if I'm walking through the building and I'm on my way to a meeting, I'm already 5 minutes late, not a great time. And that doesn't mean that's a mean person. Or if they're a little bit intense, sometimes I get accused of being a little bit intense by my wife and maybe my kids. It's because they have an agenda that they have to do because they're in a tight timeline. Realize that, take the opportunity, say hi, just say hi. Don't be afraid to reintroduce yourself. It's okay. Doesn't mean that they'll take that wrong. I'm Mr. Kral. Remember, we talked about the marching band and what we thought we could do next. Can I stop by and see you sometime? But do that in person. Don't send emails and hope that stop and see them, make an appointment, and spend a little bit of time, introduce yourself to them, because I think that's the key that will take them back to, I've got a question for Mr. Dedrick, and this guy Garth right here, the same guy that's doing all this work for us, they're some of my key people because they know so many things I don't know. And as a leader, I do not need to know how to do everything, but I do need to know who to talk to get me there. And the arts people are connected in every aspect of the building.
Can I hop in on that real quick?
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is invite your superintendent to visit your room. Invite the board members, invite your superintendent. It's really neat having Dr. Marrah come into my classroom because he stands there and he talks about, look at the things that the kids are doing. He comes around and he asks them what they're doing and how they're working on things and where they got their ideas. And it's like he's another student in the room. And it's just, there's been times where you've spent a good amount of time there just hanging out with the kids, hanging out with me, asking how things are done, and that's, it's kind of gives your superintendent, it gives your, or your board members, a kind of that window into your room, because a lot of times they get to hear about it secondhand or they get to see the result of it. But if they can be there in the moment to see that happen, what a great advocacy piece for you. What a great advocacy piece for your program, because they get to see how much the kids enjoy it, how they value it, to see their eyes light up when they solve that problem or they conquer that line in the music that they were tripping over all week. It's just an amazing thing so invite them in to see that firsthand.
And the invitation is often well received from my chair if someone sends me something in writing. Again, not an email, but a simple card. And I think, boy, I'm going to be there. I don't miss things I'm invited to personally by people. I show up at a lot of things just because I like to be around, but it's that invitation and having that door be open.
Yeah, the humanness of it all,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The social graces that we all admire and want to participate in, and we can't let time or stress take that away from us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So Cameron and Marty, this question's for you. Recently, the two of you held a session with folks from Lorraine, the school district there, and I believe I've seen the video. There were principals, administrators, teachers of a variety of genres, and they were asking you questions about, like, how do you make this work in Ashland? How do you make sure kids have opportunities? And I thought the engagement was pretty amazing. It was like listening in on a group of colleagues who were trying to figure out how to be better, just the way you've all talked here today. So would you tell us how that even happened and your thoughts on the session and maybe what you gained from the conversation?
Sure. That came about, Marty and I were giving a presentation on some of what we do at Ashland City Schools. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We were giving that presentation at the Ohio Art Education Association, their professional conference. And we were presenting, and we had a good amount of people in the room, and we noticed the one person was kind of nodding along with us, and kind of getting into it. And then so when we finished up, she came up and talked to us and said, "Hey, I'm from Lorraine City Schools, and we were trying to figure out how do we service that as far as the arts go." and we realized we were at a deficit. So we got Lorraine has put forth this certain amount of money they have set aside to be able to facilitate and get personnel and things like that. But we're really not sure how to go about it. We're not even really sure how to start. But I listen to you guys, and I really enjoy what you're saying, and you know how you run things at Ashland. Would you mind coming and talking to us about how you guys do things at Ashland? And we said, well, sure, we'd love to talk about that. So Marty, you set up the meet.
Yeah, we ended up doing it via Zoom just because that was the quickest way to pull it off in the time frame. But really, what our talk, we weren't sharing anything like earth-shattering. We were talking about being positive and going for it, and living sort of in an environment of what I call just saying yes to a lot of things. And saying yes on the surface sounds like, oh, so you just want a lot more work to do. But what we're really talking about when we say yes, we're talking about we can do things, we can accomplish things if we think we can. You know, it's that old adage, if you think you can't, you're right. We try to flip that, right? So if there's something we want to try to accomplish, we say, yeah, let's try to accomplish it. And it may not end up the way we wish it had, or it may be the most amazing thing ever. But what we try to do is lay that groundwork. And if a student wants to try a new project, we'll create an independent study for them and bring them in our class. If the staff has an issue, we're going to address it. We may not get through the exact way we thought we were going to get through, but we're going to push forward in a positive way. Living in that sort of environment where things are positive and focused on what we can accomplish as opposed to what's not going right and what's going wrong, and approaching administration with problems instead of questions with possible solutions. It's amazing how empowering you can be to somebody else when you just say, yeah, let's try that. Let's see if it works. And they don't always work, but we keep it positive that way.
I think, I tend to be the eternal optimist, and sometimes that bites me. But I think that when I look at, a lot of people see a lot of negatives that came out of the pandemic, but one of the positives I think that came out of the pandemic was here at Ashland City Schools, a lot of places around us were saying no to things. We got turned away from a lot of places when you want to play out somewhere in marching band. Like, I think we got rid of all our away games during marching band, as I'm sure a lot of schools that you guys are at did. And here at Ashland City Schools, I don't think we ever heard no. We heard, we bring an idea to the table, and our administrators or superintendent would say, just find a safe way to do it, find a way to make sure everyone's safe and everything's good, and I don't see why we can't. And I think that really led us to figure out this is a good way to approach, approach life here at school in general. It's just, present an idea and not expect it to get shut down right away. Everything that we look at with an open mind, and we find it might not be available that very moment, but we'll find a way to knock it out. We'll find a way to do it and do it well.
I love that. Superintendent, that brings me back to you. So these gentlemen would not have the courage, well, they might have the courage and the tenacity, I don't know them any other way, but to bring ideas to their principals or to the assistant superintendent, to you. And what have you done as a superintendent to set the stage for them to feel comfortable doing that? I know you talked a little bit about always being curious and asking questions and being solution oriented. That's what I took from most of your remarks today. But how do you convey that to the administrators that you're overseeing, in charge of, partnering with? Not sure which phrase works best. Talk to us a little bit about that for the superintendents or the principals who may be in this audience.
Sure. I think the most important part is we have to remember, if you think about life, you don't learn a whole lot when you do things right, but when you make mistakes, you learn a lot. And so I encourage people to take chances, encourage all of our adults, our students, to take chances and learn. And if you fail, we'll figure another way to do that. And one of the things that I think we've really grown into is our culture is accepting of try it, come up with an idea. The principals, all the time I ask them, at the end of each meeting, anything else you want to talk about, anything else that we need to do, what can we do for you? We want kids to have a unique experience that will help them to grow. Our adults, our administrative team, our teachers, and really our department heads, that's one of the things that Mr. Kral talked about. Where you lead is by what you do. And when you support things and you find ways to fund ideas, like the computer lab for our esports, when you find ways to fund things for bass drums and bass drum heads.
Absolutely.
Yes. We all work together, but we give them the chance. And then when it doesn't work, we help them brainstorm a better way to do it. Not criticize, not you failed, but how do we figure this out? Because this is a great idea. We've just got to tweak it a little bit. The answer for us over and over is yes. It's a lot easier just to be no. If you can say no, you can walk away from it, right? You're done. No, that's not what's best for kids. Find a way to make it work. Find a way to give them opportunities. And these guys have been a big part of that.
And this is where I'm going to jump in, because don't think that Dr. Marrah won't shut you down on something. But he won't just immediately shut you down on something. I can come to him with an idea, and he goes, that's a great idea, but here's 5 questions you need to answer before we'll talk any more on this. Talk to me next week with those answers. And then he wants me to really think about it. He wants to make sure I'm not only doing what's best for kids, I'm doing what's fiscally responsible with the district's money, right? The district's time, the resources and all that. So he's made me a better thinker when it comes to that. I'm not just, I've got this idea, which happens a lot. I go to him a lot and say, here's the next thing I'm thinking about. And he'll go, okay, cool, this, and this. I'll say, okay. And then I've started to realize how I can do something better or use the resources better, or how I can, oh wait, I could do it with this thing I've already got and I can move it this way and that sort of thing. One TV show that came out just a couple years ago, it's probably in the 3rd or 4th season, it's called New Amsterdam. And it's about a guy who's a doctor who becomes a medical director of a fairly failing hospital. And my wife and I started watching that show, and the one thing that lead doctor does when he walks into any operating room, the ER, whatever, he just walks in and he goes, how can I help? That's his line. Says it probably 6 times a show. And when we started watching that, I looked over at my wife and I said, that's Dr. Marrah. That's the show. So he's willing to help, but he's going to make you earn it and work for it and justify it, because he wants to make sure it's the best thing.
And what is my favorite thing to do each fall? Drive the Ferrari.
Yeah, he comes in and he conducts the marching band, usually on homecoming.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And we get him up there for the Star Spangled Banner. It's pretty great. He also dares me at least once a year to give him an excuse to buy me another instrument. He goes, give me an excuse to buy you some more sousaphones.
Yeah.
And
yes.
I'll say, okay, I'll find you more kids.
Yeah.
And we'll build that group and we'll make it great.
And they will sound great. Yes.
They do. Yeah.
Thank you for
I
what
love
you do.
that. Thank you. Thank you. Jarrod, we're going to come back to you for a minute. So I know that you two spend a lot of time with school district leaders, lots of teachers, lots of teaching artists, and the professional associations. So I think it's brilliant that you, over the pandemic, as Cameron was saying, there were silver linings, that you were able to bring together the Ohio Music Education Association, Ohio Art Education Association, Ohio Dance, the Ohio Educational Theater Association, and I remember all of their names, the Ohio Department of Education, and the Ohio Arts Council. Will you tell us a little bit about that work and how that has strengthened not just your organization, but the professional organizations as well?
Yes, of course. Well, it is exactly like that. It was one thing from the pandemic that has been able to bring us together. You know, in the past, we would meet with each organization individually. We would compile, our weekly newsletter full of resources, but never ever did the leaders of all those organizations come together. And we realized pretty early on in the pandemic that every organization had their own set of challenges, their own solutions, and we really just came together to start to get to meet each other. We had a new arts coordinator at the Ohio Department of Education that didn't really know anyone, so I sort of set up the first meeting that was just, let's meet Raymond Mueller, the fine arts consultant, we've continued from there. So that group of statewide arts leaders meets during the pandemic, during the toughest times. We met every 2 weeks to share what was happening in each of our disciplines at the state level, with the Arts Council, with the Department of Education, but just coming together and making sure we all could learn from each other, share what each of us knew. From that, we started to also create a lot of resources and opportunities for arts educators who were also in the same situation of experiences they never imagined, virtual learning, blended learning. And so instead of every drama teacher in every school in every district trying to figure it out on their own, we started coming together we first hosted several series of creative conversations for arts education, they were called, and we would come together again statewide, 100. We would do them by the discipline originally, so we would bring all the drama teachers together. We would give some sort of a professional development nugget that they might need. So it might have just been originally how to record, use your iPhone to record videos for your virtual lessons. Just little bits of information like that, all the way through to now we're called Blurred Borders for Arts Education. Well, actually, that one's multi-state. We bring arts leaders from all around several states together for that. And then Building Bridges for Arts Education is still our statewide initiative, but work things including like the new Ohio Teacher Evaluation System and high-quality student data, different things that just really, are what the arts educators need at the moment. And we've continually polled them and asked their inputs and breakout sessions and things like that. So I think that, every once in a while when we can convene 300 teachers, arts educators, administrators, anyone who really wants to join around a topic and share and break out, it's just something that used to happen, once a year at the professional organizations conference or whatever, and now it's happening monthly or every other month.
I think that's really exciting. And when I'm in those meetings, I get excited because I'm learning. I'm curious about how they're solving problems, how the Ohio Arts Council can assist if they need professional development dollars, if they need to learn about the resources that we have available in the state. Raymond from the Department of Education and I can be the resource for that. So I think that's really exciting, Jarrod, that you've been able to bring folks together. One of the silver linings for me in the pandemic was the invitation to come to Ashland High School and to be home for a year, a little more than a year, maybe a year and a quarter at that point, and for someone to call and invite me to go somewhere. I got to leave my house. It was so exciting because we had been teleworking for more than a year. So I braved coming up 77 to 71 over to Ashland and had the opportunity to see a phenomenal program that Cameron and Marty are going to tell us about. Will you talk to us about Art Signing Day?
Absolutely. 2019, I had a student, it was my first, 2018, 2019 was my first year at the high school. I had taught 15 years in elementary prior to that. And one of the students I had decided that she was going to go into art education. And I thought that was awesome. Not only did I think it was awesome because, that's my field, but this was a student that I had ever since she was in kindergarten. And at that point, this was back when I worked at the other school district too. And so she was in kindergarten there. And then I moved over to Ashland City Schools. And it just so happened that her family did as well. And so then she was in the first grade class out at Lincoln Elementary. And so I had her there, and then, you go to other schools and all that, and I parted ways with her for a little bit, and then got my job at the high school, and lo and behold, she was a senior in my 3D Foundations class, and I thought, this is so cool, So I thought, I'm going to make a big deal about this. And I had just gone to OAEA convention where a pre-service teacher, I think, or it was a first-year teacher, was talking about they had done a signing day at their school, and for a handful of students. I thought, what a cool idea is that, to be able to, I mean, we do it for athletics, and rightfully so. They're a very talented group, and they work very hard at what they do, and they should be recognized when they get a full ride somewhere, or they decide to sign with the school. But I thought, we can bring that same glory and honor to the arts by hosting this. So I thought, well, this is worth a shot. So I found out where the student was going to school, and I called the admissions department there. And they put me in touch with the person that handled our region of the state for that school. And she said, "Really, you want it? That sounds like a cool idea. Don't they do that for athletics?" I said, "Yeah." So they said, "Yeah, we have stuff for that already. We've got a banner and a tablecloth and all that. We'll bring that out." And I said, "Great," because I had planned to just kind of do it, and this, I had all this help all of a sudden. So just by making a phone call, we were able to get that rolling. And it was nothing more than, at that time for that student, it was nothing more than 15 minutes. I introduced her. I talked about what she had done, the great things she had done. Where she was going to school was Ohio Wesleyan, so the rep from Ohio Wesleyan talked about how excited they were to have her come, and how neat it was that she came from this great background here at Ashland City Schools. And then we talked. We had her. We drew up a document and had that was based on our mission statement, and at that time we did the other school's mission statement. And then she signed. I had Dr. Marrah sign it, and our principal, Mr. Packard, and so it was just. But no more than 15 minutes, but to see her eyes light up when she signed, and to see how proud her family was to be there with her, great photo ops, and I started to think about it, and I told Marty about it, and he goes, "That's an absolutely amazing advocacy piece," and I just thought about doing it as something nice to do for a kid, but to open that up for to really think about how well that promotes what we do here, and how well it puts those students in such a great light.
So we took that idea and put it on steroids, is what we did. We were gearing up to do it in 2020. We had several amazing kids going off into careers in the arts, and then the pandemic hit, and schools went remote, so we had to put that on hold. But when we got to 2021, we were bound and determined to make it great. We added up 15 or so students going into careers in the arts, and we created this program. We called local papers, online media. We sent emails and talked to every admissions rep from every college represented by the kids. A lot of them sent people out. Some of them weren't allowed to because of different restrictions. A lot of them sent videos thanking the kids, different little swag bags, a little T-shirt or a ball cap. And we did a huge event. We invited the mayor, we invited our superintendent, our principals. We did it in our theater. We put our big athletic backdrop just like a signing day, and we called each kid up. And we had Donna and Jarrod both talk for a minute. We had Dr. Marrah talk. And we really we wanted to recognize these students for their amazing achievements. We had kids going into graphic design, going into education. We had one doing an internship in music repair at a local music store. So many great careers in the arts are out there, and if we're not promoting that from within, it's hard to convince the kids from within that it's possible for them to do it. So if we highlight that, we thought, what a great way to promote what we do and to promote Ashland. So putting that all together, we thought was great. And then we pushed it out on video, we live streamed it, all the things necessary to make sure people know what great things these kids are doing.
And it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It sounds like, well, that's a big production. No, not really. It's a curtain and a table and a document, and you can, and then you make a few phone calls, you send out a few emails, and before you know it, you've got yourself an event. And yes, it does take a little work to front load on your end, and you might spend a night or two, after school, getting things ready, but in the end, just to see their faces light up when they sign. I mean, we had each kid sign And for a second, we'd say, okay, now pause for the photo op, and they had the newspaper there and the online source and the television camera there, and they look up and just a grin ear to ear, just to see their faces light up is just such a wonderful thing because, they're honored at graduation, but that's them with everybody else, and everybody else gets that same few seconds in the limelight there, and then you walk on with your diploma in hand. This gives them that moment where they get to say, we say this is our student here. They're going into this field in art or music or theater, or television, video production, graphic design, and their parents are so and so, and they're going to go to this university. And then to see them sign that document, that right there is priceless.
And it's worth noting if anybody's interested in growing that program or anything like that, I'm going to make sure at the end of this video that we have contact information, because none of this stuff we're keeping as proprietary knowledge. We want to give you every document that we've got because we want other people doing it. We'll make it easy for you. We'll give you all the templates. You just plug in your school's name and go for it.
And that event was in our small theater. It's about 375 people, half full, so we had 200 people there. And we had teachers of all levels, because they're invited, coming to celebrate the kids, as well as their family and many friends, as well as all the representatives of the university. So that for us was a wonderful day of recognition, a wonderful day to celebrate what our people do. And I get to brag about for our kids to be involved in the arts and have that as a part of their life.
I loved it, every bit of it. And I got to sit with the superintendent that evening. And so I thought, everything's so positive. Everything seems so seamless. Nobody's fussy. Nobody's running around like crazies with their heads chopped off. They're just at ease. The kids are happy. The parents were happy. They came masked for that presentation. The mayor was present. We had business owners that were present. I've owned you now. I said we.
Yes.
But Superintendent, that was the first time I had met you. And I was so impressed with your ability to be so supportive. And in ways, your curiosity also helps you make other people curious. And so I said to you, Superintendent, how do you communicate with board members and your staff, not the non-teaching staff? So assistant superintendents, your curriculum directors, and other folks. How do you help them understand that the arts are so important? And I'll never forget what you said. Donna, the arts are non-negotiable. And so that just stuck with me. And as I drove home, I kept thinking, how do we make this happen in every school district in the state? And I'm not inferring that it's not happening. I'm just saying there are some places where it's not happening, and we need to replicate those good programs and that way of thinking and that leadership for everyone. So will you talk to our audience a little bit about your approach with principals, curriculum staff, and other administrators about the non-negotiables?
Well, first of all, I would like to say I appreciate you and Jarrod being here and the opportunities you provide for kids, because without what you do, you probably don't get us to the point where we are in terms of opportunities. I know what Jarrod Hartzler has brought for us for opportunities for kids, performances to be involved in, as well as what you and the Ohio Arts Council has funded. So that makes it easy. For me, it's, as I said earlier, I get to make decisions, and I get to make some pretty rough decisions occasionally. But what I really try to do is find a way that we can make a schedule, starting with the very foundational pieces of what we do, which is the elementary schedule. People think it's a high school schedule. It's really the elementary schedule. Provide all the opportunities in that so every kid has the chance. If I want to be in band, it's during the school day. I'm not coming before school. I'm not coming after school. I'm not hoping that you catch me at some point in time. It's their schedule. The same for our orchestra kids. And our orchestra kids do 4th and 5th grade at our 3, 4, 5 building, and our band students do 5th grade. It's integral to the schedule. That's what we start with. If you start with that and you make it the most important part of what we do, that's how it becomes foundational and non-negotiable. It's not if we can get in, it is going to be in part of the schedule. And so I get to do that. I had the opportunity, and we made that number one when we reorganized our schools. And then the thought process becomes for our our principals when we meet. We have our small group, or just building principals, and then all the administrators, in which we have the conversations, book studies about what we value, and we take time and look at what we're doing, as much as honoring our kids in the athletics that we do 3 times a year, the arts, and we make that part of our meetings and part of our recognition. Every year we have at Christmas time, we have a Christmas concert by our a cappella choir, because they're so wonderful. But we have this little board meeting as part of it, but that's not as important as a concert. And then we televise that, and it plays all month long. Well, the only reason we started doing that was because I loved that group so much, and I wanted more people to hear them. And then we started, we put everything we do musically, we put out there, because we want people to see it until the YouTube people take it down, however that works, yeah. So that's we make it part of, it's seamless to what we do. So as you walk into that building, our 4-5 building, that's going to be part of what you do. You get the chance as a kid to do that. I'm not sure. And then the middle school, the same thing, the great adults within our programs, it's seamless to our operation. Then it all winds up, we complete the year with all the wonderful experiences with an art show that I remember when I first came back, because I'd been away for 7 years in Stark County at Minerva Local Schools. And one of the first people I talked to, I said, what happened to our art show? And why isn't there very much going on? He said, Marty, Kral said to me, well, it's kind of lost a little bit of its push, impetus, focus. And within, about 2 months, we rebuilt it, and it's the marquee of the experience in early May. He found a window. He made a way for it to work, and we honor all the arts at that time. It's part of what we do, and it's part of what we will continue to focus on, and give parents the opportunity to brag about their kids, give kids a chance to brag about their work, and celebrate one of the most important things that we have in life, and that is really the arts. That is, for me, my happiness. There's nothing better for me than listening to a group that is so wonderful, and I don't care what level it is. And I remember this opportunity that Jarrod worked out, that we were able to hear the Academy of St. Martin in the Field, and our kids were there. And if you have not heard that group live, look at me now. That was the best music I've ever heard in person in my life.
Wow.
And that is, you do not get many chances in life. It's that feeling that you have that you get from music. And I remember years ago when we were warming up our orchestra, and we were up at Port Clinton High School, and we had a wonderful high school orchestra. And I remember thinking, they're pretty good, and we rehearsed a lot, but we treated it like it was a varsity sport. We practiced after school, at night, we prepared, we had a whole sequence of rehearsals. And I remember getting ready to think, but you always question yourself, because you could always hear that 1 or 2 wrong notes or styling phrase. Got the pitch right. And as we warmed up, the group of kids that were there as our escorts grew and grew and grew. We started late because the doors were open for so long, because they were bringing all their friends in. And we played. And when we finished our first piece, the place blew up. And I remember looking at the kid who was our principal violinist, concertmaster, Jonathan Solers, who owns his own fine violin sales business in New York City, and he was beaming. We had it. We had that experience with music and the arts that you only get a few times in your life. And if you ask any of the kids who were in that group, I guarantee you they'll remember that moment. What we did as a group, not as a soloist, not as a conductor, but as a group, we made wonderful music. And that's what we want kids to have, is that experience, and look forward to that. And to be able to have wonderful people like you to just set the table for us, give us opportunities so we can give more kids, if they need hope, if they need a mission, if they need a focus, they can find it through the arts. I believe everybody can. So thank you very much for letting me talk today.
Well, Superintendent, I think the lesson I'm taking away from today is that if you're an arts educator, no matter the genre, music, dance, visual art, drama, theater, media arts, you have a passion for that, and you want kids to succeed, and you want other adults to succeed, you might consider going back to school and getting your principal and superintendent's license. Because imagine if arts educators were the principals in all of our buildings and they were the superintendents in all of our districts. You would have the attitude and the philosophy and the tenacity that we have here with Dr. Marrah. So thank you for that, Superintendent. We appreciate you.
Well, I'm a lucky man. I get to work with people like Mr. Kral, Mr. Dedrick every day, and have support from the Ohio Arts Coalition and the Ohio Arts Alliance. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to take just a minute to tell you that the Ohio Arts Council strongly believes in arts education too. And part of our budget is this year has actually quadrupled the amount of spending we have in arts education. And I can credit the governor and the legislature with funding that they've provided our state agency to be able to spend those dollars in schools across the state.
Can we clap here? That is so wonderful. Please clap.
Yes, well, we will certainly continue to give thanks to those who authorize us to do that work. Thank you. Well, one of the programs that I know that Jarrod and Marty and Cameron can talk about is called Teach Arts Ohio. When I came to the agency in 2014, we had a program called Artist in Residence, and it was in its heyday the model for how to do artist residencies in the nation. And so it had waned a bit, and we couldn't really put our finger on why. So we began to have conversations with principals and superintendents and arts educators, and it became a priority issue because those artist in residencies were a $1 for $1 match, and they were usually 2-week residencies. And so we know now through research and data that while an opportunity to have exposure to the arts through a teaching artist or an artist is wonderful, it's very different when it becomes experiential. So the Teach Arts Ohio program at the Ohio Arts Council is open to schools across the state, and you can engage a teaching artist from as little as a few weeks to a whole school year. And the opportunity is not to supplant arts educators in our buildings, it's to supplement it. And so many times when teachers figure out they can have a real artist who's professional, who's also got a teaching background in some way, meaning they've received professional development in classroom management, how to work with standards, how to develop good lesson plans that align to what's already happening in the classroom. And we heard Cameron and Marty both talk about that. When they find out they could have a human being like that in their room for a year, the application pool went up really high. And then, of course, I talked about quadrupling the dollars. Well, that's what happens when there's a need. My board at the Ohio Arts Council wants to fill it. And we are so thrilled that Ashland is a recipient of a Teach Arts Ohio award. And I would love for Jarrod and Cameron and Marty to talk a little bit about that from their experience.
Well, I'll jump in on that. I think it was fall of 2019. We just finished up marching band, and I called Cameron and I said, what's the one day after school that you don't have meetings or you need to get lessons done or grading? And we picked a day. I think it was a Wednesday. And so we started meeting every Wednesday after school. And he initially, of course, said, why are we meeting? And I said, we're going to figure out how to take over the school. And he laughed, and I said, yeah, that's not what I mean. But I want to sit down and figure out how we can build the arts program to be better, how we can work together, how if we unite things like music and art and theater and dance, if we unite ourselves as a fine arts unit, how could we achieve more? How could we do better things? Because they're all related. And so over the next couple of months, we met and we actually wrote an action plan on how to better the arts in our district. And the biggest gap we found was in the offerings for dance and movement. And we have different theater offerings. We do have dance offerings, mostly during extracurricular moments. We have a dance team. We do lots of musicals with dance troupes and things like that. And things go really well. But we saw, of all the needs, let's look at dance. And then we figured, well, we got to figure out how to make that happen in the district. The district could use that, and that's when we called up Jarrod and said, here's what we've done, here's what we've identified. Is there a way you think we could make this happen in our district?
Yeah, well, and I think by the time you called me, you were taking over the county.
Oh.
But anyhow.
Absolutely, yes. Multiple counties, yes.
That's right. Any student in Ashland County who wanted to participate in the arts needed to come to Ashland City Schools. But it was a really easy connection because, being so familiar with all the programs at the Arts Council, you of course talked about dance education, and I said, well, that's great. You need to write a Teach Arts Ohio grant for a dance educator, and better yet, I know of a pretty phenomenal dance educator who is just a skip away in the next county, and I think she would be excellent to do everything you want to do, and you guys took it and ran with it.
Yeah, and she's outstanding. The first year, we're on our second year now with her.
Yeah, we wrote the grant with a normal school year in mind, and then 2020 happened, and so we had to get creative.
Yeah, so it's the second year that first year she was at the high school, and this year she's at the elementary level. But she's been working to, we talked earlier about becoming a part of that whole educational force and kind of involving yourselves in the other lessons that are going on. She will go through and talk to teachers in any school she's in and find out what are you working on right now? How can I help incorporate dance into your curriculum? And she makes it very plain to them. This is not extra work for you. This is I'm here to kind of find out how I can teach my dance curriculum, but still also kind of reinforce what you're doing in the classroom. And she's found such cool ways to tie in math and social studies and reading with dance. I mean, she does everything too. Everything she does, not only do they do productions, but she's a very good videographer, and she will record and make and produce her own videos. She came into my art class one time at the high school, and she said, can I sit down? I'd love to see what you're working on. So she's sitting there and she's moving around. She goes, is it okay if I also record your kids doing a little dance number for me? I said, what kind of dance number would you like to do in an art studio? She goes, all they have to do is tap their feet. I said, well, cripe, we can do that while we're working, So she got me into it and everything. I'm there busting out rhythms with her. And so she took all that and developed this professional caliber video teaching not only dance moves and rhythm, but also fractions. And I was blown away. And I thought it was the greatest thing. So it's been so great to have her here.
It's important to note, I think, that we're not just coming up with ideas and hoping you do them. We're trying to practice what we preach here. And Donna asked about filling out grant forms and things like that. I'm the music department chair. I also do media arts where we film things and whatnot. And I, for 2 years, have completed this grant for somebody to do dance and movement for elementary kids in their math and English classes, etc. That should be proof enough that what we're trying to do isn't about music. It's not about art. What we do is through those things, but we're just trying to better the kids. If the grant was so hard, I wouldn't spend the time to fill it out to affect a building I don't go to and kids I might not ever see, or maybe they'll join band 4 years later when they get into 5th grade. But it's just that impact that I know we're making a positive impact to those younger kids. It's going to work its way through the high school and the district, and that's why it's important to do. So the grant's very approachable and manageable, and totally worth the time. And I think maybe someday I'll write a grant that actually puts somebody in my classroom, and then we'll hold on to that.
Try and well, I think we're going to score some points with ODE here too. Is that just what you were talking about there is one of those major tenets on OTES 2.0 on the new teacher evaluation standards is the education of the whole child. And when you look at what we're doing with the Teach Arts Ohio teacher and the way we try to incorporate the lessons as a whole, it speaks to that completely.
Thank you.
Can I just throw this,
Sure.
because this occurs to me with this conversation. Obviously, they did all this without me knowing, and then somehow they got me to buy in. It didn't take much, but that's wonderful. But one of the things I realized a few years ago, number one, we have longevity here. Okay, so a lot of this you can't do without longevity. They've talked about they're in the teens. This is my 11th year doing this, and so that's part of what it is. You can't have a revolving wheel and make progress. If you do, you've got to really be deliberate and go back. But I think that's really helpful. But the other element of what we've done with the adults that we hire, we look for every single person that walks in the door that affects our kids to be a nurturer. A nurturer, not a content expert, not the best person at whatever they do, but a nurturer. And for me, that's part of how we can help the fabric of our community and really build our culture to be a better place. And then that all falls in line when you think of how the arts come together.
That was one of the things that our principal talked to us about in the pandemic, was that make sure above all, even above your content, that you're nurturing kids, you're looking out for how they're feeling, their well-being, physically and mentally, because they may not remember exactly what you taught them that day, and especially down the road, they may not remember exactly what you taught them, but I guarantee you they will remember how you made them feel. And that's, thinking about that, that's what brings them back. When you make them feel good as a person, that they tie that to what they're learning. They tie that to art making or to music performance, to dance, because they had that when they were learning that in those formative years. They learned it with you, and you treated them like a person. You treated them almost like a colleague. That's what I always say about my kids is they're people I work with. So that when I focus on them and I listen to them and I get to know them and we have those conversations and I show up to their events, that they tie all that in, all that feeling ties into what they're learning and makes it commit to meaningful learning, and that's what it encourages that growth as a lifelong learner.
So you give another A for Ashland, so it's authentic, right? Because everything you're talking about here is the authenticity, whether it's integration of different courses or subject areas, or teachers with principals and the superintendent and the school board. And so I'm really proud to be associated with all of you. And I think it's time to wrap up our session. Thank you for being with us and sharing in all this experience and knowledge that we have from our colleagues at Ashland City Schools and the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education. On behalf of the Ohio Arts Council, we're delighted that you joined us today. And to follow these remarks, you'll find all of our names and emails. So if you want to know more, you want to get those materials that Marty and Cameron promised you, feel free to reach out. Thanks so much.